This is a short video to go over how to put together your English Language Learner WIDA lesson plan for CI 3000. Your final lesson plan should emphasize three main ideas, and those are comprehensible input, opportunities for interaction, and attention to language. Comprehensible input, make sure that throughout your lesson plan, it's clear to me that you are providing input that's comprehensible for the level of student that you have indicated on your lesson plan. So make sure that you indicate what WIDA levels you're differentiating for, and make sure that you include appropriate scaffolding for those levels. Scaffolding could include visual support, physical models, hands-on activities, peer activities, graphic organizers, etc. Even students who are at advanced levels of English language acquisition or who have exited from ESL need appropriate scaffolding in order to learn how to use academic language. So make sure that that's really evident within your lesson. Second thing that I'm going to be looking for is that you've provided students with opportunities to interact with the content concepts, the language goals, as well as peers. So try to use different types of grouping throughout your lesson, not just whole class the whole time. That, as we've mentioned in class, helps students develop their language skills as they have to use different types of language for different settings. When you're grouping students during your lesson, be clear as to how you're grouping them and why. For example, if you say that students are going to be working in small groups or with a partner on an activity, or to complete a graphic organizer, or to complete a communication activity, explain whether they're going to be with another student who is also learning English, or a student who is bilingual, or a student who speaks their same language background, and tell me why you think that's an appropriate grouping for the activity that you have. That just has to be a very short note, but I want to see that you're thinking about that. Attention to language, I'm going to be looking for how does your lesson address those language objectives that you set at the beginning of your lesson. How does your lesson give the students a chance to develop academic language? So if the students are supposed to be using different types of academic language to explain how they solved a problem, or to explain the results of an experiment, make sure that you provide, first of all, the appropriate scaffolds so they can do that, such as a word wall or maybe sentence frames, and then make sure that you give them the chance to practice that language clearly. Your lesson template has 4 areas: engagement, explore, explain and elaborate, and evaluate. And I'm going to go over each one very quickly. In the first section of your lesson, you need to pre-assess or review previously learned concepts. And if you need assistance with developing an appropriate pre-assessment, please let me know. Here in this portion of the lesson, you're going to set a purpose for your lesson. You're going to activate your students' prior knowledge, both about the content as well as their own personal experiences with this content or with similar concepts. You're going to preview or pre-teach or review important vocabulary if that is necessary, and you're going to make sure that you verbally introduce your lesson objectives with your students. So make all of those things very clear to me so that, I know that you have addressed all those areas. With previewing vocabulary, for example, if you're going to be reading a text together, or if the students are going to be partner reading, or if you're going to be looking at a video together, what are the key vocabulary that they are going to need to really know at the outset before they get started. Make sure that you review that if they've already learned it, or that you preview it or pre-teach it if they haven't learned it yet. In the explore portion of your lesson, this is where your students are going to be involved in hopefully hands-on, minds-on activities that will help them explore your content concepts. Be very clear on how you're presenting your directions. Write it out. I can't tell how clear your directions will be if you don't write them down for me. Also, write down the questions that you plan to ask, as well as potential student answers. Those potential student answers help you, again, think about what kinds of language that you're expecting, and that way, if need be, you can provide word walls or sentence stems if need be for those students who might need it. And be clear about including those opportunities for the students to interact with your language, with your content, and with each other. And make sure your activities are meaningful and not just cute. So make sure that they really help the students explore the concept and learn about the concept that you're asking them to, and that they're age and grade level appropriate. In the explain portion of your lesson, this might be where after an activity you revisit the content, like through a text or even through a teacher lecture, as long as it's well supported, where the students can learn more about the concepts that they were exploring. You might revisit vocabulary during this section as well. And then finally, to make sure that you include some sort of assessment or evaluation of your objectives. And this could be informal or formal. Either way, make sure that you clearly state how you are assessing the objectives that you set out at the beginning of the lesson. Please don't use homework as a primary method of evaluation, because that's not fair to all of your students. So, finally, a few things to remember on our lesson plan in general. Make sure that you have enough detail so that I can really follow along. Make sure that your activities address the objectives and the standard that you set out. Make sure to include your questioning. That's very important to me. And make sure to include a completed graphic organizer. So before you go and teach your lesson, you should go through and fill out the graphic organizer that you have designed, and so you can kind of think about how you expect your students to fill it out, how you expect them to respond, and that will again help you scaffold them as needed more appropriately. So you can include the one that you completed in your final plan that you submit to me. If you want to include a student example as well, that's also awesome. I think that's all I wanted to go over with you. If you have any questions as you're putting together your lesson, please let me know. Our rubric is in the lesson plan assignment folder, so please make sure that you look at the rubric, read it over. It's pretty detailed. I guess it's more of a checklist than a rubric. And if you have any questions about anything on the rubric, let me know. I think, oh, that's part of it down here. The one area, again, that sometimes people don't address sufficiently enough is the attention to language. So make sure that when you're writing your reflection, you also think about, okay, how is this lesson a little bit different maybe with regards to integrating language into the content area that I was focusing on. So that's it. That's enough from me. Again, if you have questions,